three splits, three different categories, that is, all looking to crown a champion here today. The season finale live from South Africa, albeit a very wet and dreary one. Three different champion teams will be crowned, and our guess is as good as any in two of the splits. But of course, at the top, things are very lonely for Pink Performance. We'll have to see how they get on with the wet weather today. Hello and welcome in to everybody in YouTube chat land. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck with Christian Stricker on the cameras for one final time this season. And this GT4 championship, Tim, has certainly had its moments. It's been special.
It has been very special. We've had a lot of interesting things. Every race has been really different, and we've had all sorts of trouble, from rain like we have here today to just chaos in general. But it does look like, you were saying, it does look like the Pink Performance team is running away with the championship here in Pro a little bit. But what I'd like you to remember, though, is that that can all go wrong very, very quickly. It's raining, it's dark. That championship lead could go in the blink of an eye. And Fisher and Foch, they're not far behind that Pink Performance car, Jesse.
Yeah, they're sure not. We'll show you the championship points as we always do after qualifying. Speaking of, 15 minutes to get it right about now. 4 a.m., a very odd time for qualifying. The rain still coming down. It will lessen in the next 30 minutes, but that will do them absolutely no good in this session. And the only thing that comes to mind for me, Tim, is you have to stay out on the racetrack here. You're not really going to wear the tires. It's all going to be about who has the driest track to work with, and you're going to have to work together here to go quicker.
You are going to have to work together. I will admit, I was actually saying to our broadcaster, I don't know a lot about Kyalami. What I do know, though, is that it's not particularly a track you want it to rain on. There's a couple of really tricky corners, and I was watching one of your championships a while ago when you were doing Kyalami, and the pitch black dark in the rain, and well, you couldn't see anything. So if there's one good thing for the drivers of this race, it's that it's 4 a.m. and it's starting to get a little bit brighter.
That's the other thing I was going to mention a little bit as well, is that it's already fairly light. You can see without the headlights, but it is still a little bit of a help here. Well, I came on talking about there being championships afoot. In fact, Pink Performance doesn't have the biggest lead. That will go to the AM championship leaders, as it's going all kicking off in the background down mine shaft there. But it will show you what we mean. And while some teams are a little bit more nervous than others after the session, but of course, just like these drivers, we have to make it through this session.
We do, and so far it looks like people have been doing it right. I mean, you saw there, the cars are sort of rearranging themselves. I'm not quite sure who these were. This is Fisher on your screen now. It's actually Foch actually in the car right now. It looks like he's about to do his first lap, so we'll see how he manages to fare there. But you can see on that final corner, it looks like the car behind actually let him through. So I'm wondering if they were maybe not quite so confident in their lap. I don't know. They might have actually just messed up. I didn't really see what happened there, but it looked like the car number 7 decided to give Foch a little bit of a go first. So I wonder if that was a bit of rearranging happening there, Jesse.
It might have been. Of course, sometimes you would think in the rain you would always want to be in front of everybody else for spray, but sometimes you don't want certain people around you. I'm guilty of that myself on more than a couple of occasions in a qualifying session. Maybe you're feeling something out in the car. Maybe you think that they're on a quicker lap, and the last thing you want to do is aggravate somebody that you might have to race later in qualifying. It's useless with 11 minutes or 12 minutes in this case to go to aggravate somebody else. Sometimes you switch it all around. Well, one other thing we haven't mentioned that I want to bring up, because it is raining, we could see a lot of silver and AM cars mixing up against the pros today in this Q session, simply because rain is the great equalizer.
It certainly is, and we saw that earlier on in the season as well. At Spa, we had rain in the quali there, and that mixed up the grid quite a lot. We had some AMs, I think one started all the way up in 5th place, so we'll see if that happens today. What I have noticed from the practice session that we've just had is that the Ginettas have been doing particularly well. I know Pope had managed to put themselves up in 5th and 4th and were all over the place at the top there. So we could see a lot of those silvers fighting towards the top. And personally, I'm very excited to see the Ginettas around this track.
Well, we were told before the race that a couple of the teams reckoned that if you were in a Ginetta or an Alpine, that you might have a marked advantage here as Samir Foch goes quickest in the session, a 57.317. Deepers in second place, 63.100s off of that mark in the 99 Porsche, and Wolf Matushka for peak performance in the 25 AMG, 3/10 down. That might be where they qualified on their first lap, but that's definitely not going to stand. And as if by cue, almost immediately, Stevenson in the 871 Chevrolet, a 57.035.
Well, as the rain starts to get a little bit lighter and people again a lot more comfortable on the track, you'll see all those times get a lot better very quickly. I was actually about to say as well, not only is the Ginettas doing well, but the Alpines, as you said, are doing good too. Newing in particular in practice, he looked like he was going amazing speed, and he was putting in some really good laps. It looks like the first one he's done now, he's sort of bailed out of, as that's 3 seconds off the pace of Foch. So most likely bailed out of that lap there. I just had a bit of an incident, but the Alpines are definitely a car to be looking out for today. We've seen just throughout the whole season how well they can perform. We were very surprised at their performance from the get-go, as we weren't quite sure whether the Alpine would be a strong car or not. But so far this season, Jesse, I'd say the Alpines have been the most surprising car.
Alpine was very surprising. We talked about the Chevrolets not being as good as they were a season ago, was also surprising, but right now you can't say that. Got a Chevrolet up front, but Alpine and the Ginetta came on strong really late. And of course now you have Denise Pope. She's put the 79 Ginetta into second place, about a second, or excuse me, a tenth and a half down off of Stevenson's time. I said just a few moments ago, if you remember, today the weather like it is, we can see silvers and AMs way up the grid. Speaking of up the grid, Samir Foch, previous lap took him to pole, and he goes back there in the boring but fast 8.78, a 56.932, the mark to beat.
And there comes the Alpine that I was mentioning just now. Up into first place is the 747 Alpine with a 156.4. So you can see those cars, they're really starting to get a lot more comfortable now. A Ginetta as well. Yo has put themselves into second place. So both the Ginettas are doing very well at the moment. We've got one in second, one in fifth, and of course, New Ring has just done their fast lap and put themselves up there. So I think what we're going to see for now, Jesse Lee, is just a lot of switching around at the top. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 8 minutes or so we see about 20 different pole positions.
We haven't seen much from the Forza Italia.pl e-racing team. We talked about a couple of times that there was a Maserati that was meant to be taking part in this championship. They've missed a bunch of races in the 69 Maserati. And oh my goodness, big style over the curb. Nothing happened there, and they will desperately be hoping that we were looking at another car, but Christian can smell an incident a mile away. So of course we were watching that. But like I was saying, this 69 has been in this championship the whole time, but has missed several races. Today might not have been the day to come back though, Tim. No ABS, no traction control in that Maserati.
I imagine they hopped onto the server, saw the rain, just went, well, here we go, because that is not the weather you want when you're driving the Maserati. Although, they hit the curb pretty hard there and managed to catch it fairly well. It almost looked like they did have traction control. So I'm very impressed with the 69 for holding it together there. They really took that curb at a steep level, let's say. But right now we're watching Foch on our screen. They're up yet again on their lap time, so we'll see whether that will improve them. I think this will take them to second place. It may even take them high. We'll see as they come across the line right now. That is going to take them up into second, and then Watt's going to come in straight away in the Porsche number 7 and steal that second place off. So, as I was saying, you're just getting loads of cars switched around, and Yo there again in the Ginetta will be returning to second place.
So, talking about Klaus here, we had previously been told that it might be pronounced Niering, or one of the two variants of that. We've been told by several people that, oh no, Klaus pronounces it this way, he pronounces it this way. We've now switched back to calling him Niering because that's the most recent report that we got that says no, Klaus pronounces it this way. So we're going to call him Nearing. Klaus, by the way, please put us out of our misery and tell us how you pronounce your name, because there is no consensus of how it is pronounced in sort of pseudo-English. So we do apologize for that. Doesn't make him any difference. He is still quickest in this session, a 56.245, the mark to beat in the 747 Alpine. Not a track that you would expect to favor the little Alpine, but in these conditions, the rules are completely rewritten.
Certainly has been showing how fast he can go. He's looked so confident from the get-go in that Alpine. It has been a very good performance from him. We're looking at Daly right now. They're about to come across the line, so we'll see where they can place themselves. That's going to go all the way up to 5th from 16th. So Daly and the Aston Martin will be very happy with how that's just gone. Daly was one of the people who actually last race, I believe it's Suzuka we were at, they were battling it out for the majority of it, and at Brands Hatch as well. So they'll be looking for another good performance here today. They're just 420 tenths of a second off the Alpine, so plenty of time to still put in another good lap. There's 5 minutes left in the session, so most of these cars, I'd say, should get in 2 or 3 more laps from now. And yeah, we'll see what's happening. I'm actually really surprised at how much this is changing around. I can't help but notice Machushka is currently in 8th, which isn't a big deal, because of course there's some silvers above them. But if Foch can manage to find their way back up to pole and then have a really good race from there, they might be looking at the championship win here unexpectedly.
Well, it is going to be very interesting. Wolf Matushka will be hoping to get at least a few more places nearly outside the top 10, and that's not what they want. The only saving grace is that there are 4 silver drivers that are not going to get pro points tonight, but not an improvement on that occasion, as that was probably an outlap for Wolf Matushka, that 230. Either that or it was a very massive spin. I'm willing to believe that it was an outlap indeed from Wolf Matushka, but time dwindling down, cars in front of him, has to get it all here, because he's only going to get about 2, maybe 3 opportunities depending on when he gets to the line. Everybody chasing Klaus in the 747 right now. Even Yan Yo in the 303 Ginetta, who is second. You know, it's funny, we were warned about 2 cars that could be weapons today, the Alpine and the Ginetta. Well, they're both 1 and 2, but just in different classes.
Yeah. The Ginetta, of course, we've got 2 in silver, and like we've said a lot now, both have been doing very, very well. I'm surprised we've seen Pope fall all the way down to 13th. They were doing some really good laps earlier, but it's not over. They could put themselves back up into that top 10 yet again. But yeah, we're watching the times come around again now. Klaus in the 747 is still improving their times every single lap, Jesse. Like, I think they've hit their peak and then they just go and knock off another 3 tenths of a second. So I'm seriously impressed with how they're doing right now as we watch Watts come over the line. Yeah, again, it's not enough to improve their position, but here comes 747 and oh! That is the Ginetta currently on pole position. That's the first 155 of the session, I believe. Actually, Alpine has just set, the 747 Alpine has also set a 155 as well, but Yo will put it on provisional pole in the 303 Ginetta with a 155.6. Jesse Lee, how is that for a performance?
Well, that was good. I was watching Klaus come across the line. You know, they set a 55.9 as Samir Foch goes back to third with a 56.165. But I was watching Klaus come to the line, and I was like, oh, 55.9, that's good enough for pole. And I looked up there, and just as I did that, you were excited because you saw Yan Yo go 55.6. So it's going to be potentially pole position for Klaus in the 747, but not on the pole position grid for the race if this stands. That is quite a gap between Yo and Nyring here.
That is a surprising gap as well. That's almost 3 tenths of a second, and from a silver to a pro, I mean, we weren't expecting a silver to be on pole. We knew that they were going to do well, but like you said, Jesse, anything can happen when it's raining. We are certainly seeing how the grid has become mixed up. Noticeably, actually, that's a lot of silvers at the top of the grid. I knew they'd be mixed, but I mean, you've got a silver on pole, you've got a silver in 4th, 5th and 6th. They are looking ever so comfortable today. And there's Pope as well. They've managed to put themselves back up into 4th place in the Ginetta. So we might see Ginettas fighting for a win here, Jesse.
This is going to be an interesting night, to say the least. And what a night. It is championship weekend for the GT4s. It just seems like the other day, Tim Peck and I were doing one of the first races for the GT4 championship. And this is our second season finale. It's bittersweet, certainly. But I can tell you, it's going to be a fight in these conditions if they hold. What is the race going to look like now? I am so very curious, as Klaus does go quicker that time, a 55.8, but not good enough to take the overall pole position, as Watts has slotted into third, which is very frustrating for the 7 Porsche, only good enough for second in class. Denise Pope has come up from about 15th all the way to 5th place in the 79 Ginetta. Phil Roberts in 6th place in the 323 Alpine. Wolf Matuszka has improved to 7th place. What about Lucas here? 17th, an improvement for the Forza Italia.pl team in that Maserati. And that is really hard work, I can assure you, in that particular automobile.
I think that Yo might have this. I'm just looking at some of the other people's laps right now, and there's a bit of improvement going up around the grid, but not enough to take that pole position from them. So Yo is currently on provisional pole. We'll see if they can hold that, as people are just finishing up their final laps now. One thing I was actually going to mention, it looks like the situation's changed slightly here, Jesse Lee, but Matuszka's only just made it up to 8th here. They've got another lap to come, so we'll see if they can improve this position any further, as they're going to want to, because the other thing I was about to say is, if it's still raining by the time the race comes around, you will not want to be starting in the middle of the pack, because you will have to play it so safe to avoid trouble. And whilst I'm sure they will be able to avoid trouble, you never know, especially when it's raining. And actually, we're going to see Matuszka there take a little bit too much to the outside curb and not spin out, but they will have to end their lap, as they've lost all of their time from a lock up on the brakes. But Matuszka will be, I'd say, hoping they manage to hold on to 8th here, because as I was saying, you don't really want to be starting in the middle of a pack when it's raining.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. A lot of drivers, including Wolf Matuszka, abandoning a lap. All those drivers were on timed laps, but they will take no further part here, finishing up their qualifying, not in the manner they wished, but exiting before they get to the stripe. Samir Fosh, complete different story from the boring but fast Aston. What will this be? Has been teetering towards the top of the field all qualifying long. Will this be an improvement? I think it will be. Up to
Ooh.
third, and will be on just one row behind Klaus for the start. The 878 with a nice improvement took that spot. Alexander Borodai, we haven't talked much or at all about the 112. Where is this going to be? Could this be a potential top 10? I think it just might, as they get to the line. And no, it isn't. It is not an
Ooh.
improved. Oh, it's invalidated.
Ooh.
That's what happened.
I thought that was going to be an improvement there, but as you said, it was invalidated, because that looked like it was a good lap from Borodai. But
Didn't mess that up all year, thank goodness, in the 913 at 152. On the second page of the championship, the HWT Motorsports 24, 146 points. The Underground Racing League 21 with 37. The Big Ones Esports team, number 17 with 34 points. Multiple Esports is not taking part, and Forza Italia PL making their first race of the season thus far in the 69. And what a race it will be.
It's certainly going to be an interesting race to join on. But here is the Silver Championship as it stands. Temporone Motorsport, they are currently leading with 277 points. They are ahead of the Alpine behind. Race Ventura Rally Tryhards, they have 258 points. They're in second. And similar to the Pro, they are about 20 points. I think that's just 19 points. Maybe 21 actually behind. So they've got a bit of catching up to do, but as Jesse said, you get 65 points for a win, so it's certainly possible. Redline Racing League are currently in third. They've got 247 points. Wild Things Racing are in fourth behind them. They've got 236. The Country Bunts B team, I've not messed it up either this season, Jesse. They're in BMW and they have 206 points. They are just 2 points ahead of Tader's Pork Pie English Mustard and the Ginetta, and we know how good that Ginetta is looking today, so they will be looking to try and jump over the Country Bunts there. John Daddy, they're in seventh. They've got 172 points. Wild Things Racing SS in the Alpine, they've got 164 points. And another Alpine behind them are Saw Buckets with 158 points. The Alpines, of course, they are also proving to be doing very well around the track. In 10th place, we've got Alemania Aiken Esports. They're in Aston Martin. They have 129 points. And I believe both Grand Familiar Racing and Virtua Racing team have been disqualified from the championship for no showing. Here is the AM split. So you have Wheelbarrow Racing Team. They're in first place with 336 points. A huge gap to Redline in second place behind. They have 285 points. That's a 51 point gap there, I believe. R4F, though, a lot closer to their target ahead. They have 266 points, so they can certainly do well this race. And they've been looking good in the Chevrolet so far. Shuffle Sport is currently in fourth place. They have 197 points. Then you've got Turn 1 Heroes and Smelly Candids. They're in fifth and sixth, respectively, and they're rounding out the back of the pack so far. And now we will be moving into the race, I believe. So we're about just gonna wait for that to happen. Here we are. We're on the track, and there is the top-down view of Kyalami. That is the track we will be racing on today. It looks like it's still raining. It is still raining, Jesse Lee. How do you think this is gonna go?
Well, that camera made me jump slightly. I was not prepared for that one. That makes you feel a little bit queasy if you're afraid of heights. We do apologize, by the way. We may have had some technical audio gremlins a moment ago, but you saw the pro standings. You kind of get the gist. Pink Performance has a 29-point lead. What is the difference between 29 points? Well, right around the space between first and I'd say about seventh or eighth place in class. So that is all Wolf Matushka and his Peak Performance 25 AMG team need to do. They need to finish eighth or better in their class, not necessarily in the race, but in class to win that championship. Silver is an absolute toss up, and I'm pretty sure in AM that there's nothing that anyone in AM can do to stop the current championship leaders from winning this race or winning this championship, regardless of who wins this race. Very wet weather indeed, like you said, Tim Peck, and it's going to continue that way. Tires are not going to be a problem, but the road conditions certainly will be. We know that the rain will lighten up in about 30 minutes' time. We'll have to continue to see how dry it gets throughout the duration of this race. One thing's for sure, people are going to be slip sliding around, and I am just as nervous as you are for the mid pack here. Of course, no live stewarding in this series, as is usual, but there's certainly going to be some, we'll call it disagreements in the mid pack.
There certainly is. I was just going to go back to what you were saying before. I believe for the AM leader to not be leading the championship after this race, it would have to be a DNF from them. So whatever happens, I expect we will see them at least try and make it to the finish line so that they can get whatever points you get for getting 6th. But I'm sure they will not have to worry about that anyway, as I believe it's the 727 that's in the championship, and they're looking very comfortable so far. But we'll see how this plans out. We're going for an outlap right now around the wet track. It's still raining. It is supposed to get a bit lighter in 30 minutes time, but I mean, there's still 2 rows of rain there on the little diagram there, Jesse, so I don't think it's going to clear up too much. I think we're set for an entirely wet race here today at Kyalami, so it could be very interesting. I know that all of the wet races this season so far have been particularly exciting in their own way, going all the way back to Silverstone, which was originally quite a dry one, but decided to rain halfway through.
I know more than a handful of drivers that I've had the pleasure of conversing with throughout this season that have been frustrated with the amount of wet weather races this GT4 season. But, well, them's the breaks. Those are the dice that were cast. And it's as much up to the race admin as it is the randomness of the weather. So I think all of that has attributed to a lot of wet weather racing. But it has just been brilliant, I think, this entire season. It kept things very, very close in a lot of respects, and it's had some surprise winners and some surprise exits too, if I'm honest. If you are just now joining us post-qualifying, welcome in to Championship Thursday for the GT4 cars. We hope that it's less wet and dreary wherever you are in the world, but we hope that you will stay with us and enjoy tonight's broadcast, and it's going to be a good one way or another. We'll try to keep you up to date on what the points championships look like as well.
I am still absolutely astonished by Yo managing to put themselves on pole position here. I tell you what, when we started out this championship, Jesse Lee, I don't think I'd have ever told you or have been expected to have been told that we had a Ginetta about to lead a race, and we're going to see how that one fares out here today. We know the Ginettas are supposed to be doing really, really good here, so we'll see whether Yo can manage to hold on to pole position as they go through the first corner. We're actually just on the start-finish straight now and about to start the race, so we'll see who can do well. Will 747 be able to find their way through, or will the Ginetta be able to stay out in front? Don't go anywhere, because we are away, Jesse Lee, and it's a very long run up to the first corner. You've got a slight clink in the track here, which everyone's going to manage to make it through. Foch is looking like they're about to make a move down the inside going into the first corner, and they've gone right through the inside. The Ginetta's going to get a bit of power on the outside. There's a slight tap with the Alpine, but we are still 3 wide going through the next set of corners. Foch has fallen slightly behind us. Klaus has pushed his way through into first place here, so Yo's dropped back 1 position, but they're still looking fairly strong. Is that Pope I see behind? No, that's not Pope, that's Watts, but Pope is still in it. They are currently in 5th place as Foch drops back into 4th, and Watts manages to find their way back up into 3rd. But for a second there, Jesse, I thought we were going to have a disaster as they went 3 wide after that first corner.
Samir Foch absolutely went up the inside, didn't quite have the room or the ability to turn the car. I thought Phil Roberts went to space just a moment ago. They drove inside the fence. I thought ET came back for him. He has since reappeared on the track. Whatever technical gremlin that was, it cleared up in an absolute hurry. No further worries, but even so, I'm pretty sure Will Patushka got a piece of the 323 Alpine. What damage might that have done to the front arrow of the Peak Performance AMG? Time will only tell. Meanwhile, William Stevenson, who we were talking about, who was really quick early in the session, the qualifying session that is now in the middle of the pack, but has a thundering V8. What will they be able to do down the long straightaways here today? But all is good up front. The 24 is in pit lane, by the way, and is sitting there. I don't know what that is. Oh, a car's going off the track. Is that the 913 of Watts? That's the, the 30 perhaps of Schumann. It was either the 913 or the 30. We're being told that it was possibly the 30 that went shooting off, just completely missing the braking zone there. Could have been visibility related, and after 1 lap, that was about as chaotic as we expected.
Well, you can see how poor the visibility is here as the Alpine is kicking up all of the rain into the car behind. It's not going to stop them, though, from coming through here, but that's Gleason. They were attempting to defend there with, I'd say, some rain smoke screen. It looks like they might have just been able to do it as Lawrence loses their grip going wide on the track there and manages to slot in nicely behind. But it's been, I would say it's been fairly safe so far, although we have seen a little bit of chaos. I imagine right now it's been absolute pain for these drivers to try and keep on the track. I was just about to say, Jesse Lee, is that the 1-2-3 McLaren sitting there in 17th that I've just noticed? I don't think we've seen them that low the whole season. Are they struggling here in the rain at Kyalami?
Yeah, and I also do apologize. I called the 1-2-3 not here in this session. Killian Ryan, we believe, celebrating a new life in the family. But I didn't see them in practice or qualifying, but they're clearly here in the race. We didn't even mention them. It's almost as if they didn't qualify, but certainly they have, because they're at least in front of the field. By the way, a correction, I thought that Phil Roberts was the car in the 323 Alpine that phased through the track and was beamed up by ET. It turns out it was Ethan Jenkins in the 24. His teammates confirmed he had an internet connectivity issue, and they have reset to the pit lane. So my apologies to the 323. That was actually the 24 Alpine that was having issues. I believe Tom Bryant will be getting in that car and continue to drive. It's close, but it's going to be contact there. Spinning the BMW in front. That's Martin Lawrence in the 304. More contact there. Oh, and it's another crash in the background.
Oh, that is not where you want to be still. And of course it's not there. Oh my gosh, that was almost another accident waiting to happen there again as they try and correct themselves. But
OTA involved as well.
That is not where you want to be in the field. If you spin, you don't want to be running in the middle of the track. Of course, you can't help in that situation. But we're going to watch a BMW fight right now down the straight. Oh, no, they're going to get the spin into the wall. I'm sure they didn't do that intentionally, but Howard there is going to get spun into the wall by the BMW they're racing. And I'm sure the stewards are not going to be happy with how that one turned out, Jesse.
Of course, no live stewarding on Thursdays. They'll have to report those incidents, but you bet they will. And that's going to be a lot of steward adjudication necessary, though, there. Andy Howard is going to be absolutely fuming for PSR. That I don't know who or what went wrong there, but certainly something. It's not every day you get spun down a straightaway. That was incredible stuff, and I'm going to need some replays of my own. That was a lot of chaos there coming through Crocodile, Cheetah, and Ingwe, and I'm not entirely sure. I just know that was it Martin Lawrence got passed around like a beach ball in the 304 BMW. I don't know who initiated that contact, but I know Bautier in the 16 Chevrolet got a big piece of that as well, and I suspect, because Deeper's in the 99s back there, that they also were involved in that in some way.
I'm just watching the fight that's happening now. Schumann for a second looked like they were about to take the 77 ahead, and then out of nowhere Stevenson just appeared, and I thought they were going to get Schumann, but Schumann has managed to hold on to it as they come through the corners right now. It looks like the 727, the leader of AM, has actually gone off the track now and let Schumann and Stevenson through, but they were also doing a very good job of defending there, looking ever so comfortable on the Aston Martin. I'd have thought the Aston Martins would have been very, very comfortable. Lee's mystery disconnector there into the distance and through the barrier, so I'd be quite interested to think how the drivers would have reacted to that one, as it looked like they had a slight tap and then the car in front of them just disappeared off into the barrier. So personally, I'd be quite flabbergasted that happened, Jesse.
Well, that has happened. Ethan has had issues earlier in the season, but clearly his people needed him right there.
His people certainly did, and he returned to them with haste, it seemed. But we're going to watch now Daly. He's got a couple of cars fighting behind him. I believe that's Borodai and Roberts scrapping it out to try and get 8th behind him. Daly looking ever so comfortable ahead of them, but it looks like Roberts actually might have just got the better end of Borodai there, as he manages to find his way through. Borodai gave him a little bit of a shunt. I believe that was just maybe a bit of a breaking point mishap, but nothing too serious. There's no spin outs just as yet, and with that, the Alpine has got the move done. Looking back at the front for a second, Klaus in the 747 has managed to hold on to the lead ever since they got through on that first corner. But Yo hasn't fallen back by much. They are about a second behind now, but for a long, long time they were within that 5/10. So the Ginetta is certainly proving to be doing very well here today.
Well, you normally see the opposite of what we're looking at here. This is Gray working on Massey. This is a Silver working on an Am, but rather more besides, not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is an Alpine trying to outmuscle a BMW. It's normally the other way around, but in the wet here today at this racetrack, those is the break. That's what you get. And what you get is an Alpine just effortlessly, easy for me to say, going around a BMW, and Alexander Gray up one more position and even closer to his Silver rivals.
Doing a very good job there indeed was the Alpine. Like you said, you certainly would not expect to be saying that. Here's Machushka, who, after having a bit of a struggle of a start, I noticed they fell back a couple of places at the beginning. They're looking a lot more confident now as they found their way up to 6th, and they're starting to challenge Pope in the Ginetta for 5th place. And we've seen the performance of the Mercedes against the Ginetta in qualifying. It certainly looked like the Ginetta's been a lot more comfortable, and I think this is the first time in a while, Jesse Lee, we've seen Machushka struggle to find an overtake happen. They will find it. We know how good they are at overtaking, and we've said so many times that Machushka is not the person you want in your mirror. But right now, it looks like Pope has just managed to plant that car in the middle of the track.
Well, here's the other part of that situation. Pope doesn't give Machushka any more points in this championship, and added to that fact, Wolf Matuszka doesn't need any more points in this championship. Has to finish 8th or better today to ensure a championship, and this place, which is 3rd in Pro, well and truly good enough to win this championship today. So it doesn't really matter. So Wolf doesn't have to force the issue here on Denise, and Denise might actually already know that. Certainly Wolf knows what the points are and knows what they need. Trying to get around, though, is Wolf. Saw a little opportunity in Mineshaft and is going to get him here in the Crocodiles. And yes, indeed, done and dusted move, and just about as easy as you like. Pope won't mind that too much either, Tim, because, again, doesn't cost them a position. All Pope will be hoping is that whenever Foch and Matuszka get up there to Watson Yo, that they slow him down a little bit.
In our top 6 right now, we have 3 silvers. All 3 of them have been doing very well, and we've seen them all do well throughout the season. Watson, the Porsche, and Pope in the Ginetta, as well as Yo in the Ginetta as well, looking ever so comfortable. But currently right now in silver, we have Yo leading the pack with Pope in 3rd. So that's both Ginettas in the top 3 will be sharing the podium today in the silver class. Right now, though, this is an Alpine. Gray, again, looking at Stevenson in a BMW. Are we going to see the Alpine yet again try and outmuscle the BMW ahead by just forcing their way through? It looks like they might be about to do it yet again, Jesse Lee.
Yeah, it's so backwards to what we're used to, but the Ginetta absolutely hounding the very large and in charge BMW. Alexander Gray is having a lovely day in the Wild Things Racing Alpine. Meanwhile, this battle is quite interesting as well. Sokola in the 69 Maserati, no ABS, no traction control, fighting the Alpine of Joe Gleason, that 320. What a very strange matchup here.
And that Maserati, although it's their first race of the season, they've been looking ever so comfortable in it. Oh, you're right.
Goodness, he got really sideways in that Maserati.
I didn't see that. I was really confused as to what you're talking about. I missed the part of the Maserati was sideways there, and I'm a bit upset now. I was quite looking forward to seeing it, but they managed to catch it no matter what, and certainly made it look like they're in control of the car. The McLaren 123, Killian Ryaminen, by the way, not sure where he started. It certainly wasn't 8th place where he is now. He's been having an absolutely phenomenal race. According to our broadcaster, he started last, which wouldn't surprise me as we didn't actually see him in qualifying. So this McLaren, Jesse Lee, they have been having the time of their life here today.
I will say, I had imagined as much, as Stevenson gets a little sideways off the final turn there. But again, I don't think they ran a qualifying lap, did FFS Racing in the 123, but that is incredible. They started last. They were 14th at the end of the 2nd lap, and now back inside the top 10. They've already gotten in front of several of the competitors that they're racing against. They're marching to the front. Keep an eye on them. An hour and 7 minutes left. Who knows? They could be fighting for the win here at the end of the day.
They certainly could be, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were. We've seen how well they've performed throughout this championship, and honestly, if you'd have asked me race 2, race 3, maybe even race 1, who I thought would be winning this championship, I'd have probably handed it to them. But of course, Machushka and teammate have done very, very well in the pink performance Mercedes, and the 1-2-3 hasn't been having a good couple of races. Let's say they had a bit of problems at, I think it was Brands Hatch, and then of course, like you mentioned, they weren't actually present for the whole race last time at Suzuka, but that certainly has twisted the championship and made it that bit more interesting, as we're now going to watch Polanco. They're just coming around the corners, just trying to catch up with the car ahead. Not seen a whole lot of Polanco today. We usually talk quite a lot about Polanco, and they've done very, very well in the last couple of races. Surprisingly today, it looks like they're just sort of trying to get a feel for the track and maybe get a bit more confidence into the car.
Well, this is the team for me all season, the John Daddy team, the team that has been the most surprising. They've had 10 penalty license points since round 1. They were nearly disqualified after 1 round. And if you go back to race 2, I pointed that out, that I don't know how, I may have mentioned, I didn't know how long that they were going to be a part of this championship. Well, they've made it to the finale. They've done such a great job here late into the season, and we saw Borodai earlier not waiting, not willing to let any opportunity slip through their fingers, and right there, just taking advantage when you have the moment.
That was a very, very beautiful move, and it looks like Roberts is going to try their luck on it as well. But for now, we're going to watch what's happening at the front with Foch and Machushka, and Watts. This is a fight for 3rd place. It looks like Foch has managed to fight their way through Watts, and they've found themselves into the 3rd place for now. But here's Machushka. They have managed to recover from where they started, which I believe was 8th, and they look like they're looking for their way through Watts right now as well. Of course, Watts and Machushka aren't going to be the ones fighting for position, but Foch and Machushka certainly will be, as the Mercedes still hasn't managed to find their way through the Porsche yet. They look like they may have had it for a second, but the Porsche has been doing a very good job of defending. So the Silver certainly is not wanting to yield this. They absolutely don't have to either, by the way. There are no rules in regards to letting cars in different splits through, which is, I'm going to say, I'm very happy about that rule, because that was a very exciting piece of racing, Jesse.
Yeah, it sure is. It's the same way in SRO championship racing as well. In case for those of you that don't watch that, it is the very same. There are 2 or 3 classes that are present on any given racetrack in those GT races, and there are no rules. As long as you're on the same lap, you race for positions. And so often we've seen the controversy of a Pro-Am team beating a Pro team and defending. Well, there's no rule against it. It is game on, and very much the same case here, as Foch and Watts very much fighting one another. And now Wolf Matushka's turn here. Can he get in front of Watts again? You would think Matushka would be very careful here, protect his championship lead, and of course looking to become the GT4 Pro champion here. I don't think he's ever done that. I don't think Peak Performance has ever won a GT4 championship, which would be another feather in that team's illustrious cap.
They'll be certainly looking to do that today, but I don't want to say that they want to be careful here, because every single time I've said that, the car has had a bit of a problem, and I thought I just jinxed them for yet another race. But it looks like Machushka has managed to make it through there, albeit with a slight tap to the side of Watts. But it feels like every time this season, Jesse, I've said the car just has to be careful and not throw away the championship. They've instantly spun out on the next lap, so I'm very glad to see that Machushka now is through very safely. Borodai, by the way, we were saying earlier how feisty they were on the cars ahead. Here they are passing that. I believe that's the Maserati for 12th place, so they've managed to fight their way through the pack. At the beginning, wasn't where we possibly expected Borodai to be. They've been climbing and fighting their way through the pack quite quickly, and it feels like for the most of this race, they've been doing a lot of overtakes.
Yeah, I would say they've not been taking no for an answer, has the SS1122 team. They've certainly been trying to get as aggressive as possible, but also doing it as safely as possible in a lot of cases as well. And they've been making a lot of headway following in essentially this man's tire marks. Killian Ryan Meenan making up another spot on Jordan Daly there. So up to 7th place, Killian Ryan Meenan's FFS car coming to the front in a big way. By the way, new segment. Oh, this is interesting. Benjamin Schumann here trying to defend away from the Janetta. The Janetta on the outside, that's Joe Gleason in the 320. And off into the grass is Gleason right there. But harder with the brakes.
Oh!
Just a little bit. Schumann unaware of the impending danger. Gleason avoids it. And excellent driving, all things told. It's not the easiest thing to do to brake in the wet. As Gleason continues off the track, is this going to be more positions? It is, as Borodai takes advantage. We just talked about him. He's got another spot.
He has got another spot indeed. I think Gleason's life just flashed before their eyes there as they almost went into the rear of Schumann. Here comes the Maserati, by the way. They fancy their chances on the Alpine as well, and they look like they managed to fight their way through. So certainly not the end of the lap that Gleason wanted there. They looked like they were about to take Schumann ahead, and now they're just dropping the places ever so fast. There goes the Maserati. Of course, no traction control is not going to make that turn one easy, especially in the wet weather, but they had their fun whilst they lasted on that first straight, and unfortunately going to miss that first corner, but recovering quite well. They are still in the mix, although they will drop back a little bit behind the Alpine behind them too. But Gleason, I mean, that looks so good for him, and then it all fell apart in a matter of 3 corners.
Oh boy, well, wet track and no ABS does not a good turn make, and I think you just saw that with that car. I was curious about Joe's tactic there down the straightaway to door slam the Maserati there. That was interesting. It's hard to tell from our angle if Gleason was moving to the left or the Maserati was moving to the right. Either way, very interesting call to make contact there. Certainly that would accrue some sort of damage. What I was going to say earlier was, new segment here I've just decided to start. It's called Around the Pit Lane. I'm talking about Nate McConnell here. They report they were taken out, and now they're on a recovery drive. Any chance of a good race gone now. Martin Lawrence pretty much echoing that, says that they're more than a lap down now after early contact.
I was going to say there are a couple of cars that had some incidents earlier that are basically on a fight back now. Here we have 2 Alpines sliding around the corner together. Again, Roberts and Gleason, they've been doing so well in the Alpine so far, but for a second there, it looked like Roberts was going to get through Gleason on one of the early corners, losing a little bit of grip. So whilst the Alpine has looked very fast over 1 or 2 laps, it seems that they're starting to struggle with the actual race pace, which isn't too surprising. We've seen that in a couple of other races where the qualifying has gone a lot better for some people than the race has, and of course it is all about the race at the end of the day. Back to what happened though between Gleason and the Maserati behind on the straight. I think what happened, Jesse Lee, is the Alpine didn't change the angle of their car for the little kink in the track and just continued to go straight through it, like they would have been able to do if the Maserati wasn't on the outside of them there, which of course they were. So I think the Maserati was just correcting themselves for the kink, and the Alpine wasn't correcting because they probably didn't realise they had to. But it certainly looked like that could have all gone very, very bad very quickly, but luckily it was just a tap, and both cars managed to stay on the track.
Very excellent analysis there. The 727 is in the pit lane. Everybody has to do a mandatory pit stop with a driver change. I was told a couple of cars will not be able to do the driver change today. They will have to drive by themselves. They will accrue a 130-second penalty, but they will make the checkered flag today. Billy Octane in the 304 BMW is down and away in that car after they have fulfilled their driver change obligations. And of course, this man, Wolf Matuszka, has gotten by Watts. Watts is through, or excuse me, Matuszka's through of Watts. Oh, car off there. Was that Klaus? That wasn't Klaus, no indeed. That was a different Alpine altogether. But Wolf Matuszka has not only got by Watts, what I was going to say, and has gotten by, or gotten up to Samir Fosh again, who is beginning to yard him ever so slightly. Neither one of these drivers anywhere near Yo, who is 6 seconds up in front of them. And a further 5 seconds in the front is the 747 of Klaus, who is running away with it at the moment.
Klaus is having an amazing race and is running away with it. I can't help but notice that Matuszka's about to take Foch, and Foch is, well, they're currently hoping that Matuszka not only doesn't manage to take them, but somehow has a huge accident that puts them very, very far away from them, as that is the only way they are going to close the door. Of course, you said now that Matuszka has to come above 8th in their class in order to secure their championship win, and it looks like they're going to do that with ease, but both very accustomed to each other, I'd say. Foch and Machushka have certainly had their fair share of fights across this championship. It seems every single race they've had a fight at some point. And actually, these were the two at Silverstone that were battling it out for second and third in their split again. So they are going to end this the way they started it, whether it's all for nothing for Foch or not. They're going to end this race by battling the pink performance Mercedes.
Well, you wouldn't ask for it to be any other way. Alexander Bordai continuing their run towards the front, but I believe... Oh boy, that's not how you draw it up.
That is not the move that Bordai wants to go for there. I think it's just, we were saying how much that they are trying to fight through the other cars, and I think they're just that much later on the brakes. They probably didn't expect the car ahead to brake that early, and it's resulted in a bit of a nudge from behind that's unfortunately ended up bad for the car in front. But Bordai certainly, I don't think, would have been intending to have spun them out there. It just looked like one of those issues where maybe they should have broke a little bit earlier, although I imagine the stewards aren't going to care too much about that. They probably end up with some penalty points, although I think Bordai for the most part is safe. Here though is Machushka on Foch again. Here again though is Pope on Watt right now, which it might be the more interesting story, mind you, as we know how good the Ginetta can be, and we know how good Pope has been so far. Will Pope be able to make it through what's ahead? Well, we will see as we go down one of the straights here. We're about to come into a right-handed corner. It looks like the Ginetta can be a bit far back for now to make a move, but it looks like going for that corner, a very short bit of analysis from me here, Jesse Lee, the Ginetta looked a lot more comfortable than the Porsche did.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Ginetta can do. Denise Pope, who is very much on the march here. It's been fun the last several races for the Ginetta, specifically after the 1.8 update. I feel like it's added a little life into that particular car, and this team in particular as well. The Wild Things Racing team have been loving it, and now they're going to be loving second place here. I think it's almost foregone at this point.
They have been doing so well recently. I mean, we've said it basically every race leading up to this, and even in some of the other championships I've seen, Pope has been doing absolutely amazingly, as well as Pixie, their teammate. Both drivers have been doing ever so well in that 79 Ginetta, and we're still watching them try and find a way through the Porsche here. I must say that they are significantly closer to the rear of that number 7 Porsche than they were on the previous lap. We're coming into the start-finish straight now. We've just got to go around the final corner. We'll see if the Ginetta has it in it to maybe find a way through here. I doubt it, as the Porsche, although not the fastest car in a straight line, much faster than the Ginetta, might I say. And you can see now as Pope starts to slightly disappear into the distance there. I think realistically, Jesse, if they want to catch the car ahead, they're going to have to do it in the twisty turny corner section.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the absolute best bet. Folks, we do apologize. We know that we're having continuing audio issues with our replay system. Just assume that we're saying something incredibly informative and analytic during the during the replays, and just enjoy them for what they are. But we're talking about the second place battle in silver, which is also the 5th place overall by Denise Pope. Has been a delight to watch in the last several races, and today has a more than good chance of continuing on to second here. And then the question will become, well, what about the win? Could this team, could Wild Things win in silver today? They're going to have to catch Yo to get there, but it is not out of the realm of possibility with a pit stop and the weather today continuing to become less and less intense as the day progresses.
Talking about going for a win, here is Killian Ryan Meenan in the 1-2-3 McLaren, starting in last place, has not let that stop them climbing through the pack as quickly as possible, and they now find themselves reaching the back of P6 here. If Pope can't make this move on what soon, I think Killian is going to shove his nose in and see what he can do in this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't manage to hold him up for very long. He has been doing seconds a lap faster than the cars that are ahead of him, hence why he's caught up so quickly. And like we were saying earlier, just because he started last does not mean he can't win this race. If he has closed this much of a gap already, it would not surprise me if with the pair of the pit stop and just managing to have a bit of good luck on overtakes on the track, this McLaren might find himself one final win this season.
That could very much be the case, and I think they're 5th in the championship. You can never doubt how many spots they could gain. They could potentially get back to the pro podium for the championship if they can convert this last to first. They would need a little bit of help in doing so, but it is not impossible, and Kylian will be thanking Pope and Watts for racing each other the way they have been doing, because all that did was reduce the time it took Kylian to catch up to 5th place in the first place. So a little bit of a freebie for the driver of the 123 FFS Racing Macca, as the 2 cars in front of him, he's not racing for points, but they're racing each other, and that's all that really mattered. He might get a 2-for-1 special here if he plays his cards right.
He might do, but whilst it will certainly benefit him that they're fighting so that he can catch up, it won't be benefiting him now as he wants to get through, but they are still fighting ahead, so that's just going to make it even harder for him to find a position here, unless, as you say, he does manage to hit 2 birds with 1 stone and get through at the same time. But I imagine that is not going to be easy. Both Pope and Watts have been driving phenomenally so far, and you can see every single corner, Pope is on one side, Watts is on the other, so there's really nowhere for the McLaren to stick their nose in to try and find that double overtake. Looking on the map right now, I think number 323 has had a bit of an issue. That will be Roberts in the Alpine, so had a great start back there, but obviously that's not continuing. There's actually, here comes the McLaren right now. It looks like they made contact with Watts and actually spun Watts right back out of that part of the race. Pope now is going to be very thankful for the McLaren. Of course, Kylian being respectful here and letting Watts back through, although that is certainly not going to help with the other cars that managed to pass in the process. But Pope is going to be happy to get that place very easily. But that's what I mean. Kylian can go for the move all he likes. There's no room to do it, especially not if the cars ahead are fighting. And that was the risk there, is that if he went for the move, there was a very high chance of him hitting someone, especially in the rain.
Yeah, I think that's the apt term there. I think the rain, I think that's the catalyst for me. Kylian, that's not his driving style. I think maybe the weather played a little bit of a factor there. Probably reckoned in the dry that might have ended up a little bit better. May have still been a little bit of elbow rubbing there, a little fender contact, but probably wouldn't have ended quite that badly perhaps. But either way, the move didn't come off. Kylian's going to lose a ton of time. Denise Pope's loving it though, up to 2nd place. Didn't even have to do anything there.
Certainly didn't have to do anything at all. And now the chase is on to see if they can find their way to Foch up ahead, who is no, not Foch. Yo, I'm getting confused. They're trying to find their way to Yo up ahead so that they can get the win in their split. Both Ginettas now in the silver are holding 1st and 2nd. So this is the best performance we have seen out of the Ginetta all season. And we said it at the beginning of this race that this track was looking ever so good for both Ginettas. Someone new to add to this little fight, by the way, Jesse, is Daly. Jordan Daly for the RRR Academy tryhards appeared not only out of nowhere, but is now holding on to 6th place after the slight incident between the McLaren and the Porsche behind him. I'm sure he's going to be very happy with how this turned out, as if he can get through Pope, he'll be looking for a podium in his own split.
Well, the RRR Academy tryhards team, I will say this about Daly. I have the privilege to talk to him quite regularly. He is one of the, strangely enough, one of the most upbeat people, even when he's not had a great race or whatever. He's generally a pretty upbeat person, and he has been the last several weeks, especially about he's liked his chances. And today, considering the weather, I was wondering if that would still be the case, but looking very fighty indeed up near the front end of this field. Kylian Ryan Meenan, this is going to be take 2 here down the front straightaway into the elbow turn 1. This should be as easy as you like, and it would appear as if Watts is just giving him the room there. Damage already done to Watts after losing a multitude of seconds to Denise Pope. But either way, Kylian Ryan Meenan through up into 7th place for the FFS Racing team.
I think that was a smart thing for Watts to do there. If they did yield that position and not really give too much of a fight for it, that might have been the smart thing to do. We know how fast Kylian is, and it's probably better for Watts to just try and follow him as closely as possible, really, and just stay in that very tight gap and get a bit of a pull through the corners. Here is Machushka. They're looking for their way through Foch right now. The two, I'd say, probably two of the most standout liveries this season, the pink Mercedes and then the blue and orange Aston Martin currently leading them. So these have been the standout liveries through the season. It looks like Matusha's might get a move down the inside here as Foch slides a little bit and goes wide. Matusha is going to hold on to it very nicely, but unfortunately did not manage to find their way through quite enough there, and for now is going to have to continue looking at the rear of Foch. They don't have to get through here very fast, Jesse, because I've just noticed we're coming up to the pit window here. There is not a mandatory pit window that you have to stop in. There is a mandatory stop. You do have to swap out your driver once in this race. That's the little orange one that you can see next to everyone. The pit window I'm talking about is the optimal time to do it. Of course, your driver has a 45-minute stint timer. That means that you need to pit between 45 minutes on the clock and 35 minutes on the clock in order for you to not have to pit at another point in time. But ignoring that for now, we're going to go back to the fight at hand with the Mercedes versus the Aston Martin. Is Matusha going to be able to do it round the outside of Foch going into the first corner? They are practically neck and neck right now. I'm sure Foch is not going to yield this position very easily as they continue to hold the inside. And there it looks like they're going to get a bit of a better exit and just slot themselves back in front of Matusha again.
That's a worst case scenario for Wolf Matuszka. You spent that entire lap fighting the third place car, second in your class, and not only are you losing more time to Klaus out front, who, by the way, is still pulling away, has the fastest lap of the race, and it's looking more and more likely that the 747 Alpine is going to win this race. And with every passing lap, the odds of these two, the 878 and the 25, catching up becomes less and less as well. But damage done there on the timesheet between the second and third place driver in pro. But they will continue to fight that out. I was wondering for the longest time if Wolf was just following Foch because Foch was catching Yan Yo. Turns out that wasn't the case at all, as Wolf was given one opportunity, saw one weakness in Samir and took it there. So maybe just playing it a bit safe, but certainly wasn't following him for any particular reason. Felix Deepers in the 99 has had a rough day, to say the least, back down in 14 in the overall scoring, and Gray threatening to take even that place from the 99 Porsche.
I was going to say, we've not seen the best of performances out of the 99 today. I'm sure it's just because they've had a bit of a struggle there, really, but Deepers has certainly been one of the standout people in that Porsche in this championship. I believe we've had a podium or two out of them so far. Here is Daly, though, looking to find their way back through Pope again. They've been chasing Pope for a couple of laps now, not managed to find their way through. It looks like they're going to go for the inside here on the final corner of the circuit, and they managed to have it so far. Will the Aston Martin be able to outpace the Ginetta? That is a no,
unfair.
Most instantly.
Oh, that's unfair.
The Ginetta made that look so easy. It's just, that looks like a BMW on any other car for a second, but well, I do sometimes doubt how much acceleration the Ginetta has. They have shown how much they do here. It looks like Daly went for another move there, but yeah, again, Pope is going to hold on to it and not give it up very easily. Number 79 Ginetta, they've managed to hold off Daly, for 2 corners now. That is not an easy task, Jesse.
Killian Ryan Meenan coming into this fight now. He got into this fight initially. This was between 2 silver cars earlier. Now it's a silver and 2 pros. Everybody still fighting for the 5th place position. Same song, different verse for Killian Ryan Meenan. And I was just thinking in the final turn there, I was like, oh, looks like Denise is just letting Daly have it, considering they're in a different class, which you do see sometimes. I had no idea that Pope was just going to rocket down the front straightaway. I think that might have been her plan all along. It seems to work.
I was not expecting it to happen. I also was not expecting it to work, but Pope made that look like that she had planned it all along. It would look so easy on their behalf there. So we're going to continue to watch what happens here. It looks like Killian is yet again eager to get through, but we know what happened last time, and I think they're going to play it extra safe this time. Not that they weren't playing it safe before. We know that the 1-2-3 McLaren is a particularly safe driver, but here comes Daly. They fancy their chances yet again on the Ginetta, and it looks like the McLaren might try and follow through here as Daly manages to find their way through, but the Ginetta, look, oh my God. I agree with you there. I thought the Ginetta had it, but sadly this is going to be the end of their short fight as Pope finds the grass a little bit. It looks like they're actually just going to pit, which I think is a smart choice here. I mean, if you've been holding on to Daly and Killian for that long, this is the time to pit right now. They've just got through. You can pit, you can get Pixie in the car, you can see what they do, but a phenomenal effort from Denise Pope there to keep it ahead of the two pros for that long. That was an absolutely outstanding bit of fighting, and I must say, I thought she was about to do it again. Daly went for the inside, and I thought that she was just going to power around the outside again.
She might as well have done, but of course, I think she saw Killian Ryan Meenan in there as well, and she saw the contact earlier with Watts, maybe thought better of it, and also coming in, that might have also been the plan. She didn't want to be stranded on any particular side of the track or ran into right before the pit stop. Well, certainly well within the time to get that pit stop done and get it taken care of. Deepers, by the way, in the 99 we just talked about, was fighting for 14th. Some of the pit stops commencing has shuffled them up the order a little bit, but even still, the pass made for Deepers up to 11th on Watts right there in the 913.
And of course, we are now in the pit window I was talking about earlier. So this is where most of the cars will start to pit, especially as we come to the 40-minute mark. A lot of people opt into pitting right on the dot of the 40-minute mark there because it gives both drivers an equal amount of time in the car. I imagine, though, looking at the people at the front, both Klaus and Yo are going to stay out for as long as possible, all the way down to the 35-minute mark if they have to, because they've been having an absolutely phenomenal race so far for both of them. And I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Didn't even get to say this at the start of the race. It was so chaotic. A big thank you to our partners, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and SimRacing.gp. More information about those lovely people after the race, and what a race it has been. If you weren't with us at the start, it was chaotic to say the least, very wet and very treacherous. A lot of spins, most of them I think we could agree, Tim Peck, were assisted in some way. The visibility quite poor as well. The track conditions seem to have improved, but the racing has been fast and furious, and I don't know if this race has been all about family. We've got a couple of family members racing on teams with each other and against each other in this series, but it has been very, very tough. We've got all sorts of different cars with different layouts, and one car in particular, the 69, that doesn't have any sort of electronic aids. It's a difficult day, and what a race for the finale of the season. For every story of heartbreak, there's been a triumph today. It's been absolutely brilliant.
I was wondering how long it would take for the Fast and Furious reference to come out of you here today, Jesse. It's
about family, Tim Peck.
It's all about family indeed, and you've been so on that message today so far. But here we are watching Killian. They are looking for their way through Daly. Of course, this fight initially started with Pope just in front of the two of them, and it looks like Daly is still now holding on to Killian. To be fair, what it looks like so far is a case of how long can we hold up Killian, and then we're just going to pit, as I imagine that's exactly what's on Daly's mind right now. They're going to stay out until they are overtaken, and then they will probably opt into going to the pit lane. They only have 4.5 minutes left to make that pit stop so that they don't go over the max drive limit time and give themselves a nice hefty 130-second penalty from the game itself here. But up front, we've got Machushka and Foch. Machushka still has not found their way through. But it's like you say, Jesse Lee, he really doesn't have to here. He just has to be safe. Of course, Foch is his biggest driver right now, so to be just behind him in position, he's not losing the amount of points that he needs in order to lose the win. All Machushka has to do now is drive in the race. It doesn't really matter where he comes. At this point in time, it's basically just for bragging rights.
Yeah, that's basically it. What do? Do you value your pride or the championship more here at the end of the race? And Killian Ryan Meenan making his way through on Jordan Daly. I was going to mention earlier, I didn't think Jordan would let him through just like that. Jordan normally will fight you for a ranking position, and Killian won't take no for an answer. I thought that would be a very interesting fight. Well, turns out Killian drove down the inside. Jordan just sort of let that happen, and certainly you'd have to imagine that has something to do with tactics on the 373.
I think it probably would. Usually I'd say, oh, it's just, they found themselves in a bad pace on the outside and just accepted they couldn't fight it. But I am wondering if they saw the pace of Killian Ryan behind them and thought, you know what, if he does go for the move, we'll just let him have it because we're not sure if we can really afford to keep fighting this. And I think it's probably the right call to make. Here's Pixie, by the way. They've taken over the car from Pope, who had a phenomenal stint. They're doing pretty well, currently leading the people who have been pitted so far. Although it looks like the majority of the people they were racing before haven't pitted yet. But we will see what happens. It looks like they might gain quite a lot of positions once everyone ahead starts to pit. Not got long left to pit, by the way, only 2.5 minutes. So I imagine most people will now be coming in either this lap or the next. As you can actually see on the mini-map, a lot of the drivers have either just pit or are now pulling in. Now's the time to do it, Jesse.
Yeah, and almost on cue, Klaus Nearing in the 747 Alpine, who has led this entire race thus far, into pit lane, will give way to his teammate in that car. And they will be pitting out of the lead and hopefully will be keeping the lead. The NSN Racing team has had a flawless race thus far, you have to say. Yan Yo came through to take the lead of the race again. And the Taters Pork Pie English Mustard team, which I'm sure there's a story there that we don't get up here in the booth, but every time makes me hungry. They are right now the leaders, but like you said, Tim, they're going to have to come in this time.
They are going to have to come in this time, and I think it's a bit of a shame for Yo because it looks like they're having an absolute blast out there. And you never, I know the feeling when you're driving around and you're doing this well, you never want to come in to pit. Not because you don't want your teammate to experience it too, just because you're having that much fun, really. But they'll get one more lap to reminisce about the lead that they originally had. They have, of course, been leading their own race in the silver for the entire race so far. Started on pole position. I'm going to be honest, I know we were saying how good the Ginetta is, but I was expecting them to fall through the pack a lot more than they did. So the fact that Yo has managed to spend the majority of their time pulling away in second place, I think is absolutely amazing for the silver leaders so far. But we're going to watch them come into the pits into this lap. There's about 2 more corners before they do, and they will be one of the last people to pit. Of course, Stevenson's just coming out of the pit lane now. We've got Watts and Foch. They've also got to pit. I was going to mention earlier, yesterday, I'm surprised that Wolf Machushka didn't pit earlier. We saw, like, they were stuck behind Foch for a very, very long time, and they weren't finding a way through. I'd have thought they'd have pitted quite early on, just seen if maybe they could get out some good laps and try and either undercut them or at least just have a bit of fresh air to drive without that risk of crashing into them, really.
Well, this is an interesting battle here. Killing Ryan Meenan has been in the FFS Racing McLaren. Mike Noble in that car now. Jake Boswell in the 373 now. Jake Boswell will cherish this opportunity to fight wheel to wheel with Mr. Noble, and I feel that's exactly what you're going to see, a straight up one-on-one fight here. Meanwhile, answering a question from chat, Ferg asked, is turn 1 in this race? No, they've been in this championship, but they are taking no further part in the championship. They were not on the entry list for the day, that 404 turn 1 car.
I believe the last time we were watching these two cars battle it out, the 123 McLaren had found their way through the 373 Aston Martin ahead. That is now going to be the case here, actually, as I seem to just jinx Boswell, who has a little bit of a slide coming out of the penultimate corner and therefore will not be able to do the final corner as well as they'd hoped. Noble is going to say thank you very much as they find their way through fairly easy. I was about to say as well, yeah, Boswell's now getting stuck. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. That McLaren has looked really, really fast on the straight, and I don't think the Aston Martin got the acceleration they needed, but it looks like Noble actually might have missed his braking point as he goes a bit too wide into the first corner there, and Boswell's going to say, thank you very much, I will have that position back.
Jake Boswell will be grinning from ear to ear, the man they call Jedi Jake. I call him the Bosmeister. His friends just call him Boz. He'll be smiling about that. And how many times have we seen that already today? We saw that out of the Maserati, but a few other cars as well, just getting a little bit deep into the turn 2 braking zone. Make no mistake, that's actually turn 2. Turn 1 is a dog leg on the front straightaway. Kyalami is very particular about that, by the way. They don't like you calling turn 2 turn 1. They say they have names for a reason, but rather besides a position gained back from Jake Boswell. Maybe caught Noble a little mirror driving there, maybe a little bit.
I certainly hope that the Kyalami officials aren't watching today then, as I have called that corner turn 1 the entire race so far. So hopefully I'm not going to be arrested after this race for getting that wrong.
I
Either
think you're
way,
good. I think they're asleep. I think it's really early in the morning in South Africa. If you are from South Africa in the chat, feel free to confirm, but pretty sure it's really late.
well, it's currently quite early in the morning for them right now. It's 5:53 a.m. in the race. That is, of course, not exactly linked to the real time so far. Here, actually, is a fight that I think is particularly interesting, Jesse Lee. Fischer and Witt now in the Mercedes and the Aston Martin coming out of the pits. They're still fighting, but Norbury's in the Ginetta taking over from Yo, who had a phenomenal stint. And it looks like Fischer's already caught up with the Ginetta ahead. So that fight for second place in the Pro Championship has now become a fight for second race in the race overall. And we'll see whether Fischer can find
Round
their way
two.
through the Ginetta ahead, or maybe Witt will get the better end of the stick and find their way through here.
Oh, it's a
It
sin!
looks like Fischer has managed to get their way through the Ginetta there. They've sent it right down the inside here. Witt is too far back to even start to match that and do a bit of retaliation. So the Ginetta is just going to have to let that one go. Fischer absolutely sent that down the inside. And I think if Norbury had tried to defend that, might have seen a bit of an accident happen there, Jesse.
Do you see what Garrett Fischer did actually in the 878 that made that even more spectacular? Normally when you send it into sunset like that, you drift out towards the outer apex of the track where you exit. Well, he didn't do that. He wanted to stay on the racing line, did Fischer, so he got out of the throttle, turned more to the right, stayed as close to the inside apex as possible, as if to defend against the 303 Ginetta. It was absolutely brilliant driving, and it may have kept not only the 303 behind him, but Phil Witt behind him as well, as Mike Noble now is around Jake the Bosmeister Boswell, and this fight, I'm not too sure we're done just yet, as Jake is not going to give up pursuit. Almost off the track is Mike Noble, trying to maximize every corner and every apex, as that FFS car, mind you, started dead last, about 24th place, up inside now the top 6. An excellent drive.
Both Killian and Mike Noble have done a phenomenal job of driving that McLaren. They have absolutely driven it to the limit. As you just saw there, they have taken every curb as much as possible. They've gone as wide as they possibly can on every corner where it benefits them to do so. And we saw there that, I agree with you, I don't think that fight is over between Noble and Boswell. So far it's just been a case of one of them goes slightly wide in the corner, the other one goes straight down the inside, and I imagine that is going to continue for as long as possible. Boswell is still very close behind Noble, so we'll be looking to retaliate soon. Here's Witt looking for their chance on Norbury. We saw Fischer came through earlier. They had to do a massive send down the inside to make that one work, so we'll see whether Witt can do it in a different way, or whether they too will resort to doing a send down the inside. It looks like Norbury is going to be a lot more defensive on this one, clearly getting a bit of confidence now as to where they are on the track and feeling the car a little bit more than they were when Fischer was trying to come through. But again, we've said it before, Witt and Machushka in this car, they have to come above 8th place in order to secure their victory in this championship so far. And well, they're sitting on the podium. They've sent it down the inside. Norbury has become just the Ginetta on the sidelines, really. Everyone is doing an absolute send down the inside. It seems like it's the only way to get through Norbury at the moment as they drive this car amazingly. But there we go. There is the send from the Mercedes. A particularly risky move, I'd say, especially seeing as all they have to do now is not crash their way out the championship, but certainly not settling for a podium in their class. They want the podium in the actual race standings as well.
Well, I'll give credit to Norbury here, and I think we should. I think it's very important. They've had a lot of drivers throw it down the inside of them today, and they have not flinched once. They have not been part of an accident. They have not encroached or in any way done anything that would cause any sort of accident to themselves or anybody else. They've kept their own car in one piece, which is hard enough to do when people are sending it down the inside. But on top of that, they've had the wherewithal to continue pounding around at their own pace, and that pace today could be good enough for a top 5 overall. So all the credit to the Taters team in Norbury, who in 2 different laps has had 2 different drivers in completely different corners just give them the business down the inside and completely unfazed is that 303.
Yeah, that is an absolutely phenomenal job from the 303. When you've got people sending it, of course, you don't actually know if they're going to do it. One minute they are behind you, and the next minute they're either alongside you or even in front in some extreme cases. So it takes an awful lot of discipline there to not do the initial reaction, which is you might see a car coming up behind you very fast and think, oh, I'll just quickly turn in to defend that thing. You can't do that, especially if they send it, because that will result in an accident. So a lot of discipline there and a brilliant drive from Norbury to manage to keep it out of an accident there. We've seen both that pink Mercedes and the 878 Aston Martin head are very battly today. They are just trying to get a higher position as possible. And I think it's very smart of the 303 and Norbury to just avoid a lot of the chaos as it is. Of course, they've got a huge gap to Pixley and the other Ginetta in their class behind them, and the other driver in their class is fighting for first right now. Pixley has got a lot of catching up to do if they want to find their way onto the front of this race for the silver. But I think for now, the 303 just needs to keep it on the track and stay very safe, Jesse.
Well, they don't really have any rival near them now. There's 3 pro cars, including this one of Mike Noble, who is right behind Watts, and Boswell, who we saw earlier, is pictured there. And then behind them, you may have saw a Ginetta come into frame there. That's Richard Pixley in the 79, and that's the nearest competitor to the 303. And right now, I'd have to consider them with less than 30 to go a non-threat here for the win in silver. So like you said, for Norbury, it's just about keeping on the road. And I think that played a huge factor in the 2 cars, Fisher and Vitt, getting around them. Just not wanting to cause incidents, saying, man, I'm trying to win my own race here. You do your own thing. Rather unfortunately, remember earlier when I said that it was less than 10 seconds Phil Vitt was behind the 747? I'm afraid to say it's closer to 20 seconds now, around 19 by my best maths, which isn't too good to be fair, but it is a very, very long way to get back to the front. I think anything but second place for Phil Vitt is out of the question today. The question is, what is Pink Performance thinking? Are they going to settle for third after all here? Or do they even have the pace to get back up there? Meanwhile, Mike Noble trying to go the long way outside. You don't want to be side by side through here. It's at least a second a lap slower doing this. But oh my goodness, can you believe this? FFS Racing has somehow maintained side by side in this corner. And now at the top in Leacock, they're still side by side. Excellent racing from Watson Noble. Can you believe what you just saw? Pinpoint precision necessary. All the boxes checked from both drivers. Excellent stuff. Mike Noble gets the spot. Top 5.
That was an insane bit of racing from those 2 drivers right there. I thought at any point in time that was all going to go wrong, but Noble stuck their ground. We know how much they've been driving this car on the limit so far in this race, and that continues with Noble. They were continuing to drive it as much as they can on the limit there. Didn't yield at all. Watts didn't yield, but it didn't matter because both were very sensible and managed to hold it together there. I'm just noticing right now, Jesse Lee, Henberg in the 747, they're not the usual driver in that car, if I'm correct. Isn't it usually Verstappen that usually shares that 747 with Klaus?
I think you're right. I think it is Verstappen not in the 747 this weekend. Hindenburg in that car now. Of course, this is a team championship, so it doesn't matter who's in the car, as long as the car is in the race, obviously. And I think they've had to call an audible here in that car. That's well spotted, Tim Beck.
Yeah, Henberg is going to continue to do the good job that Klaus was doing. They're just, all they have to do is hold on to this nice lead that they've built themselves here in the Alpine. Of course, it looks like they are going to slightly walk away with this race. I'm just looking at the lap times coming in between the 747 and the 878 behind, and it looks like they are fairly similar. So I would not be surprised if the Alpine did just manage to drive this till the end here. Again, I've jinxed a lot of cars by saying this in the past, but all they have to do is stay out of trouble, and I'm sure they will be able to do it. Looking at back at Watts now, Boswell is catching up, and it looks like they might be having their chance at a strike at Watts in a second. Watts, of course, has not pitted. They came into this race knowing that they wouldn't have a teammate, so their goal was to just drive to the end. I imagine because of that, they probably just fueled up their tank to the absolute brim and are trying to do this without a pit stop, hence why they've climbed the positions very quickly from where they were. So one thing that is going to be starting to affect them now is the tyre wear of all things. But will they be able to defend Jake Boswell? We will see. Boswell has been doing so well so far in this race, and we did see them fighting the 1-2-3 with Noble in it earlier. Have fallen a little bit back for now, but will they be able to catch up? We'll just have to wait and see, Jesse.
We sure will. For those of you wondering why Watts hasn't pitted, well, they must be driving alone today in the 913. They'll get a hefty penalty, a time penalty that is, at the end of the race, but for them, it's just taking part, seeing the checkered flag in the championship, in the series. More tales from pit lane. Joe Gleason says, was in the car for half a lap. Then his sim crashed. And says that we were having a good race, but sim crashed. So rip me. And that is rather unfortunate for them. And of course, Joe Gleason that team was also going to take a penalty for not having a second driver, but unfortunately did not get that today.
Here is Boswell, as I was talking about earlier. Their job is to currently overtake Watts right now, and it looks like they're about to do that soon. They're just currently sizing up Watts, trying to find where their weak points are on the track, where there might be an opportunity to strike with that Aston Martin. So we'll see whether they've done it here. And it looks like Watts actually is going to pick up a little bit too much grass there as they go through that corner, and that will be, I believe, the place for Boswell very easy. So no longer having to look to make a move. We're not going to see another send like we've seen now a couple of times in this race from some of the other drivers. That will be Jake Boswell finding their way through Watts. And I must say, Jesse, that is not the first time we've seen in this race someone having to give up a position because they've touched that grass.
No, the grass always dangerous here, as you see Watts go off the track there a little bit. But you don't want to hit the grass anytime. You don't want to hit the grass in the wet, especially after some of the physics updates. Something that hasn't been an issue today that I thought might be an issue today is track limits. The 1.8 update brought a ton of changes, some of which even still we haven't really had to talk about too much, one of which is the track limits in a confirmed wet race are a lot different, and we haven't seen a single drive-through for extending those track limits, which is really surprising to me, Tim, because we've seen a lot of cars blow corners.
We have seen a lot of cars blow corners, but one thing I was going to mention is that rain always makes these track limits seem a little bit different. Of course, when you're going over the track limit in the rain, you're naturally going to have to slow down just to recover the car anyway. So I think that makes it that little bit easier, really. One thing I was going to pick up on, Jesse Lee, Pixley is now coming up to Watts. They have been doing some absolutely phenomenal laps. They have been chasing and chasing Norbury ahead of them, and it looks like now they're just going to start hitting the traffic that they need to overtake. I don't think it's going to be too long before they find their way through Watts here, as they are already trying to look for a way through in some of the corners. You can see them, they're looking for a way through, but Watts has managed to plant himself in the middle of each of these corners, although for a second there I thought Pixie might have tried to have sent it down the inside, but of course didn't have the opportunity to do so. We know, we've said it so many times, Jesse, this Ginetta is performing well so far, and look at this. Again, the Ginetta going to send it down the inside, a little bit of a send there, but has managed to do it cleanly as the 79 car Ginetta Pixley pushes their way through Watts. They have looked so good here today, Jesse Lee.
I don't know what's going on in the Wild Things Racing management team, but somebody must have come over the radio and said, okay, Pixley, it's time to win. And I think Richard Pixley has engaged esports mode because they are really fast in comparison to everybody they're racing against. It's a tall order for them to get to Norbury, but if they can get through all of these cars cleanly, and I don't think they can, but if they did, they could potentially catch Norbury, but it would be a tall order and very close indeed. But according to my math, because I have done the math, as you might expect, not out of the question.
Well, it's certainly refreshing to hear you say it's not out of the question. Of course, we do have a bit of math out of you every single week here, Jesse Lee, and I must say, so far you haven't actually been wrong. Of course, we did doubt you a little bit at Spa the last time we did say that there might be a catch-up game happening. I was a little doubtful as to whether it would, but they did manage to catch up right at the end of the race. Of course, the overtake didn't happen in the end, as it was literally the last lap. The two cars that we were talking about came up to each other, but it certainly isn't out of the question. Looking now at the Maserati for their first appearance in this championship, it's not been that half bad. They showed up
No.
in possibly the wettest race so far we've had in this championship, in a Maserati of all things, with no traction control and ABS. And so far, I think they're in 9th in their split overall and 12th in the race. They have done very, very well, Jesse.
We had a chatter in our YouTube chat earlier mentioned that anyone that is crazy enough to drive the Maserati in these conditions deserves a medal, and I'm willing to agree to that. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, and add to the fact they're inside the top 12, and this team who hasn't competed at all this season due to one reason or another, coming out in the final just to post some points. They're going to do so, and they're going to beat some of the other pro cars here.
They've done a really good job indeed, and we're just going to watch them now. It looks like they're approaching the number 7 Porsche ahead of them, so we'll see if they can close that gap a little bit more. They was a lot tighter the last time we saw it, but of course they are just trying to make their way on the track. They have got a lot of pace by the looks of it. They just need to get a couple of good laps in to really find the end of the Porsche there. But I tell you what, Jesse, this has been a very exciting race so far. Of course, most of the championships have already been decided before we even went into this race to a certain degree, but they've certainly made it an interesting one to watch, whether they're fighting for a position in the championship or just on the track. It's been absolutely great here at Kyalami so far. We're now going to watch De Bont in the Chevrolet attempt to do an overtake on a BMW ahead. I think this could be quite interesting, as the Chevrolet this weekend has proved to be a very, very good choice of car.
Yeah, it was very stout in qualifying, and it's raced particularly decently. And we didn't talk about AM nearly at all so far, and we do apologize for that. But for Martin De Bont in the number 16 Chevrolet, they've had a great race. We started with 4 AM cars. We're down to 2 now, and Mir, the only other AM, and they're about 10 seconds or so behind the 16. It's looking like an excellent day for the Chevrolet as well. But of course, De Bont not willing to stop there. Of course, you know, what sounds better than 16th overall? 15th. Nice, nice odd number, isn't it, though, 15?
It is indeed. I was actually about to mention, in regards to the silvers mixed in with the pros, we saw in qualifying a lot of silver. Oh, actually, just minusing that for a second, that looks like the Chevrolet went for a move there down the inside of the number 4 BMW, but unfortunately, De Bont did make contact with Phil Marta here and did not manage to hold it together. They have, of course, spun out on the track, and actually, oh no, Mir is a little bit too far behind to catch up. That's Hemberg, I believe, lapping him, but that is certainly going to be a bit of a setback. What was initially a 10-second gap to the BMW in his cars behind is now just 3 seconds, so not an ideal situation for the Chevrolet there. Here is what's happening with the 84 car behind and the 86 that is currently putting pressure on it. That is a good news for De Bont ahead, as it means even though the 84 has managed to catch up here, they are a bit preoccupied right now of just trying to keep number 86 behind.
Yeah, they sure are. Well, of course, this could be very important. Of course, John Benton doesn't really care too much about what any of the other drivers here are fighting for or against, but of course, Benton wants to get this position away from Mir, but it also might be really important because that very smashed, I thought coming down mine shaft, that's going to be contacted car completely off the road there. Mir's going to get back onto the racing track, but what I was going to say is that's Kaladian in the 30 there, that very bent up Aston. We didn't talk about them, but they are the championship leaders in silver. They've had just the most frustrating day of the Temporal Name Motorsports car. They're going to come back down pit lane. I think they came in early in this race as well. They're going to have to pit again. But the reason I bring that up is I have done the math, and I think despite having a very frustrating day here in South Africa, they are still going to be crowned champions simply because the 323 has had an even more devastating day. The next nearest car in the points is the 7, and they are on the podium, but they are nowhere near any other car in their class, and they would need to basically win this race with the 7 Porsche, and they would need to, well, Kyalami to have the day that they've already had, but I think they're going to come up just a little bit short, and Kyalami and the Temporal Name racing team, the 30, is still going to win that championship.
Number 7 is not going to be happy with you saying that there. I tell you that they were having a really, really good race at the front with the 2 Ginettas there, but unfortunately there was a slight racing incident that has put them this far back on the cars ahead. That being said though, I mean, these 2 Ginettas that are currently holding 1 and 2 in class, they have been driving so phenomenally anyway that I'm not sure in the grand scheme of things it would matter too much there, but the Maserati is going to find their way through the Porsche as well. So a good start for the P7 Porsche, not quite the mid-race that they'd have wanted. We'll see what they can do towards the end here. I just want to draw your attention very quickly, and this is just me trying to make something way too exciting, which isn't actually the case, so don't get too excited here.
Go on.
Noble is up into 4th at the moment, and they are closing on the cars ahead. Now, I know I'm not you when it comes to doing the math, but I have done the math. It's not possible. And I'm confident in saying that. But it's nice to see that a car that started dead last on a wet weather circuit, literally behind all of the silvers and all of the AMs as well, has managed to find their way all the way up into 4th with the fastest lap, Jesse Lee.
So, as we get near, you absolutely you had a train of thought, and you absolutely ruined it, Tim, with your maths. What I was going to say is, Mike Noble might not get there, but it also probably doesn't matter, as they're going to gain some points on some cars that they're racing for final championship standings. Looks like Peak Performance is going to win the championship. The 747 is going to win the race, and Garrett Fisher is going to get a deserved 2nd place here today, as they withstood all of Peak Performance for the majority of this race. And as I said earlier, even though Kyalami and the number 30 have had a poor race and a terrible day, they have not run afoul of the rules today. They're going to finish, and I think they're just going to win the Silver Championship. And I think the 7 Porsche is going to move up into 2nd place and be less than 10 points behind the number 30, who will win that championship. Now, here's where it gets real interesting. The 727 also had a lot of issues in today's race. They're no longer in this race. I don't think they ran minimum time to get points, which I think is going to promote the 84 BMW into the championship lead after this race. I think the 84 in the final race is going to complete a 30-plus point comeback and win an AM.
I was about to ask you to do the math on that, Jesse Lee, because I just noticed that the 727 was no longer in the race after starting it. So I was about to ask you, are they actually going to not be able to get the points they need? And I think you're right. I think the 84 car might be able to get the championship here in the final race, just for finishing of all things. Here is Pixley though. They are catching up with Norbury ahead of them as quickly as is possible. They've got to get through Jake Boswell first, which certainly is a bit of a tall task here, as we see them take a little bit too much grass, but luckily not enough to send them too far back. But they do have to find their way through Jake Boswell. That's a slightly tall order. We'll see if Jake's feeling particularly nice today and might let Pixley through for their chance to catch up with Norbury ahead. But for now, the fight is between the 2 Ginettas. That gap was huge. It was about 13 seconds. It is now just 4 seconds between the 2 Ginettas. So we will see if Pixie can close that gap. Like I've said though, they do have to find their way through Jake Boswell. And personally, I think that in itself is a bit of a tall task to ask from them.
Well, I tell you what, our very own broadcaster, Christian Stricker, mentioned earlier, this is about 30 minutes ago, actually 20 minutes ago, he said that he reckoned that Pixley could get there because they're running quick laps. I looked at the time and they were 21 seconds behind Norbury. And I said, well, that's unlikely in 20 some minutes. And then I noticed the time difference between the 303 and the 79, and that's when I started wondering, wait a minute, could they get there if they disposed of all the cars in between them quite quickly? They have done that, has Richard Pixley, and they're just right there. They're right around 4.5 seconds back. If they can get past Boswell in the next lap and continue to crank out these lap times, I think it genuinely is possible. And right now, all over the back of Jake the Bosmeister Boswell, how will the Bos play this in Mineshaft?
They want their way through as quickly as possible. You can see Pixley is desperate to get through, and they will be, because they've got a chase on right now. That being said, Boswell is not a slow driver by any means, so they will also be gaining on Norbury. The problem will come that then Pixley has to overtake 2 cars in one go, which is in itself quite a hard thing to do. But when it's raining, it's even harder. We'll see if Pixley can find their way through Boswell, or whether they're just going to have to hope that Boswell makes a mistake of some sort at the time they catch up to Norbury. Of course, playing into their hands so far this race, you said there were originally about 4 cars between them. Of course, those 4 cars, well, 3 of them anyway, are now sitting in 2nd, 3rd and 4th. They found their way through Norbury instead of Pixley having to fight their way through, so that made it that much easier for Pixley in the 2nd place Ginetta there. They, of course, don't have to try and find their way through the likes of Noble and Vitt, which will certainly help them in their battle. But I tell you what, Jesse, this could come down to the finish line if Pixley does manage to find their way through Boswell here.
I was just thinking of a few things. How crazy would this be if the 79 came back and completed this? And of course, Mike Noble and the FFS racing team from all the way at the back to inside the top 5, an excellent drive. And the most unlikely championship defeat in this entire series coming into today. The biggest gap was 51 points. That was actually in AM, and it would appear as if Mir in the 84 is going to get enough points to take that away from the 727. Now, I don't think the 727 did 80% of this race. It didn't feel like they did that. And that means if you don't do 80% of the race, you don't get any points. It's as simple as that. And the 16 was quite further down the championship order. And the 84 was 2nd, 51 points to make up. 2nd place will give you, what is it? Do the math real quick.
I will let you do the math quickly.
It does 58 points. 58 points. That would be enough.
That is just enough. And I will admit, I do feel bad for them now. I feel like I should almost put my hat down in commentating here. We started out this race by you saying we are very unlikely to have a 50-point gap get closed like that. I then said just afterwards, well, technically it's possible if they DNF this race and don't finish it. And that is the case right now.
Ooh, Pixley getting a little exuberant there into turn 2. He's going to lose a little bit of time on the Bosmeister there. And if you are the 727, if you are a member of that team, I agree with Tim Peck. It is all Tim Peck's fault.
It is my fault, and I do apologise. I've been jinxing people left, right and centre this championship, but at the same time it has certainly made it interesting. Here is Pixley. They were gaining very well onto Boswell and Norbury ahead. That gap had closed to just under 3 seconds for them. Of course, they had a little bit of an accident there, which wasn't too big, but it is going to set them back a little bit.
Keep in mind, Tim, Jake's catching Norbury as well here. I think regardless, Jake Boswell's going to catch Norbury, and Pixley even quicker than Bos. Oh, it's going to be real close at the line.
I think it is going to be really close, but I am a little bit skeptical here. Of course, I don't want to be a pessimist because Pixley and Pope have done so well in that 79 jet so far, and they absolutely will be deserving of a win. So has Norbury and Yo, to be fair. They will be deserving of this win. This could go to either car, but I will admit, Boswell is catching, actually Boswell's catching very, very fast. That was 2 seconds, it's now 1.2. But Boswell has to get through, and then Pixley has to get through as well. That being said, I've just been pessimistic about it. Boswell has closed that gap and is now putting that much pressure on Norbury. If they can get through, that in itself will slow Norbury down. And if Pixley can get that much closer to Boswell as well, they don't even have to get through Boswell. They just have to make sure that they are close enough that when Boswell gets through Norbury, that they can follow through very quickly. This is absolutely going to come down to the finish line, by the way. I reckon this will be a final lap overtake, if not final corner or final start finish straight.
Keep in mind, Jake Boswell has motivation here too. He's already top 5 in his class, but he could finish top 5 overall and put a little extra feather in his cap if he can get by Norbury. And of course, Pixley wants to win the season finale for bragging rights as well. All of these drivers motivated. I guess the question we haven't asked that we have to ask Tim, what has happened to Norbury's car?
I don't know. I think it looks a little bit unstable. I have been just trying to watch it from this angle.
Oh, that's sin!
I thought they were going to go for the full send there, but they did back out of it, which is a good job because I think Norbury's had enough of the sends and certainly will not be quite as lenient on this one as he has on the past 2 that he's had to face so far. So we'll see what Norbury can do about it. They've done so well at staying ahead of the 373 as it stands, but they do have to defend for another couple of laps here. Again, Boswell is getting very close to that Ginetta. It looks like that move is imminent. Of course, Norbury doesn't have to worry about Boswell. Boswell is not their problem. It is Pixley, but Pixie's very close too, so I imagine as soon as Boswell gets through, that's going to make it that much easier for the 79 Ginetta to also do something. It looks like they've actually gone right there. That will be a massive setback for the 303 Ginetta. Boswell is now through. Pixley is right behind, and this is not how the 303 Ginetta would have wanted that corner to go. That has opened the door massively for Pixley behind. This gives them an entire lap to fight Norbury and see if they can find their way through here. I don't know where the leader is right now, whether they've got 1 lap or 2 to make this happen, but I don't think they've got the second lap. The leader's only coming around the first set of corners. They've got a lot of the lap left to go. I think this is the final lap they're going to have to do it, so Pixie needs to get a move on here, but they are ever so close. This is 4/10 of a second in it right now, and Norbury is not looking comfortable in this car, Jesse.
Hinberg is the leader of the race in the 747. He's halfway through his final lap, and Boswell's through up inside the top 5 overall. The battle we're looking at is Norbury and Pixley, the 303 and the 79. Equal equipment, 2 different Ginettas, but the handling could not be more different on these 2 cars. Final time through sunset as the leader comes down to mine shaft for the final time. Whoever leads at the stripe this time will be declared the winner. Pixley, will they send it? Will they give it their all to try and win this race? Will they settle for second? I don't think they will. This is going to be really close as they finally come through. The S's and now up to Leah Kopp for the final time. Is there a send here? I think they're just a little bit too far behind. But as this battle continues, what about the 747 Alpine? Was out-qualified. It didn't matter. Peter Hinberg, NSN Racing's going to win the finale at South Africa.
They have just won this race, and Fisher and Vitt will be shortly following them across the line. Here is the race we are looking at right now, though. This is the race win for silver, possibly. Will Pixley be able to find their way through here? They've gone a bit too wide on that corner. They only have 1 more corner to make the move right now. That does not include it in my little description there. Here is the final corner. Will Pixley be able to send it down the inside of Norbury? They've started again for an attempt there, but it will not be enough. Norbury has planted himself in the middle of the corner. They have also pushed Pixley right to the outside. It looks like Pixley was going to take the chances around the outside off the track of Norbury there on the start-finish straight, but alas, it was not to be. The winner of the silver split will be Norbury in the 303 Ginetta. Pixley will just miss out by 9/100ths of a second behind in the 79 Ginetta. A phenomenal performance from both those drivers. We will see how the rest of the silver field fares. I believe the Porsche number 7 will be rounding out the top 3. And now we can see, actually, they've just got themselves a drive-through.
No, he won't. He got a drive-through penalty. No, he won't.
Oh, that's going to add time, though, but they are a lap ahead of the next silver car, so I think they'll just be safe there, Jesse Lee. But very tight. I mean, you were saying there's not been any drive-through so far this race. I think he was giving that to you just to prove you wrong there, Jesse.
Well, that was very close indeed. They did still, that 30-second time penalty, they still will get that position after all. And what a crazy race and a finish as we will take a look at the final results of the series finale here on GT4 Thursdays. Hinberg wins it in the 747 Alpine, Fisher second in the 878. Phil Vitt brings it home in the Pink Performance 25 and wins the GT4 championship in pro. Congratulations to Pink Performance, Mike Noble, Jake Boswell, finishing out your top five. Norbury holds on by a thread in the 303 Ginetta with an excellent run to the flag and winning in silver. Pixley, a brilliant race as well in second place. And Cramp, even with the drive-through penalty converted to 30 seconds, gets third in that class.
So
DeBont is
nuts.
going to win in the Chevrolet in AM over the 84, and the 84 will be your AM champion. So will the number 30 Temporal Name Racing team in the silver class. Congratulations to all of the champions from this series. I need to lie down.
I agree with you, Jesse. That was a absolutely amazing race. I was not expecting that level of fighting from any of those drivers, and there was quite a lot of chaos, and there was some dirty moves there, I will admit. But some of the discipline and just the clean racing was amazing. I mean, we saw Noble fighting Watts. That was such good fight. I thought for a second they were just going to go, and they managed to hold it together. It has been some beautiful fighting today, and I'm very happy to see the 747 doing some celebratory donuts as they won the final race of the season. Of course, well done to Machushka and teammate. I have forgotten who it is now, and I'm ever so sorry about it. Phil
Phil
Vitt.
Vitt.
Well done to Wolf Machushka and Phil Vitt for winning the Pro Championship. They have done a phenomenal job the entire season, as have all the other drivers. I must say, Jesse Lee, last season, season 4, was very, very impressive. But I think season 5 absolutely blew it out the window.
Well, it's absolutely incredible. We don't know when the next GT4 championship will be, only assuring that there will be one, and we assume it will be in the new year 2022. I hope you all will be there to join us. And before we end tonight, thank you all for not only being a part of this race, but we hope that you've been with us the entire season. And please like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing action. We'll be back with you on Friday for the GT3 World Championships here on RCI TV and the return of Night Owl this Saturday evening as well. And what a crazy few races it has been coming to the flag of this one. The most unlikely change in AM for champion. 51 points needed. They got 58 and won the championship. Incredible stuff. And wow, it has just been a pleasure. Hopefully, Tim Peck, Christian Stricker, and myself will be back for the next GT4 championship. But before that, told you after the race, we'd talk about some of our excellent partners. RaceDepartment.com, your source for racing news and modifications in the sim world. AK Informatica for their server hosting. Driver61.com. You can use our discount code in the description for 25% off driver coaching at driver61.com. Driver coaching can make you a better driver. Fanatech.com. You can use our affiliate link in the description. It doesn't cost you a penny, and it may help us with things like server costs when you use our referral rank. SimRacing.gp. If you're tired of the pub racing scene, tired of bad lobbies, SimRacing.gp. Join a community and get involved in some excellent scheduled racing. What a season it's been. Some surprise champions on top of some surprise contenders as well, and some deserving champions, I think we would all agree. As a big congratulations to Pink Performance number 25 for their win in Pro, Temporal Name Motorsports in the number 30 Aston Martin, and the Redline 84 for the biggest upset I think there's ever been in RCI history. 51 points needed. They got it in their BMW. Congratulations to all of them. Tim, I think you and I need a little bit of a vacation.
We certainly do. I will just mention for those of you that want to get in on the GT4 action again as soon as possible, we are running a winter series starting on the 23rd of December. It's going to run for 3 rounds. It's going to be every single Thursday. So it'll be the 23rd, the 30th, and the 6th. It's going to be run slightly differently to how we've done it before. This is more of a Christmas fun season, let's say. So it's not going to be one of the main GT4 series. It's just going to be called the Winter Series. It's going to be run a little differently. Round 1 will be going to Paul Ricard. The catch is you can only drive a Ginetta. Round 2 will be going to Brands Hatch, and the catch there is you can only drive the KTM. And then round 3 will be going to Monza, where you can only drive the BMW. So if that is something that interests you, sign-ups are now open. You can go over to our website on RCI, and you can sign up there. There will be, I believe, 3 splits. That might be no, there'll be 2 splits. But if we don't have enough sign-ups in each, we'll just merge them together and make one big split like we did here. So if that's something that you're interested in and you've got a bit of spare time over the holidays, certainly go and sign up to that now.
Absolutely. Couldn't said it better myself. Join the website, join the Discord, get involved with sim racing. We're nearing the end of all of our major competition in 2021, but 2022 signups are going to be open quite soon in the next couple of weeks, I would assume, for all of the major series. And don't worry if you're not the fastest driver in the world. As you can tell from this particular series alone, we have drivers of all certain skill levels. So why not sign up? Get involved today with the RCI community. Tim and I would love to talk about you in an upcoming series. And hopefully, for the Winter Championship that Tim just mentioned, hopefully that will be live streamed. We don't have any specific plans right now, but we are definitely trying. Well, a season that started out dominant by a few cars. Had a huge monkey wrench thrown into it with the 1.8 update. Everything flipped upside down as if we were making an omelet, and it was an incredible fight to the finish for a lot of cars. Cars that were mediocre became great, and cars that were great became mediocre. Teams rose to the occasion. It's everything you could want. If you don't own the GT4 DLC, what is wrong with you? Don't you want to do it after watching that series? It was brilliant stuff. Tim, it's been a pleasure to work with you all season, you and Christian both.
It has been a pleasure to work with you, Jessie, and thank you yet again for coming along to join us for the GT4s. I think you came in season 4 and you weren't quite so sure. I think we have certainly sold you on it now. This has been some of the best racing, and also a big thank you to all of you drivers who take part. It's always brilliant watching you guys, and as I said, it just gets the driving standards are better and better every season. It's been so fun to commentate on. So a big thank you to all, and go get yourself a well-deserved rest, everyone. That was a brilliant race, but you all need to rest after that.
It's been an absolute pleasure bringing it to all of you. And like Tim said, a big thank you to everybody. And all that's left to say is see you next time for more GT4 racing action. On behalf of everyone here at RCI, the stewards, the broadcast team, and the admins, we thank you for watching. Have a good night.